Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Aaron.
Aaron is right here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. We do have a big update in one of the, I think it's about 5 lawsuits going on right now against Scientology, against the Church of Scientology International, against Scientology leader David Miscavige. Several of these lawsuits are trafficking lawsuits. The one we're about to talk about today is actually a child SA lawsuit, which is a little different than how it has been described in some platforms. The interesting update is that one of the attorneys who was previously representing clients against Scientology is going to be deposed in this present and completely unrelated lawsuit against Gavin Potter, David Miscavige, the Church of Scientology, and Bridge Publications. This is pretty interesting. The material that I'm going to use in this video is the reporting that was done by Megan Cuniff, as published on the Underground Bunker blog. And let's see what we have here. This particular reporting focused on 2 separate aspects of the hearing that occurred a couple days ago. The first part of the hearing was actually Scientology trying to get the judge to rule that they could officially unmask the identity of Jane Doe 1. They said, Your Honor, it's not fair. She has named our client, Gavin Potter. Why should we not be able to name her? It was a little weird to see lawyers actually argue just that we should be able to do bad things to her because we feel she did bad things to us. One of the strangest arguments that Scientology made is that without being able to either use her name or to include information in filings that would make it just unquestionably obvious who she is, Scientology would not be able to get witnesses to come forward who have knowledge of the circumstances, the incidents, the factors relating to this lawsuit. And that is an absolutely insane argument to make. Scientology already knows the identity of every single person who could possibly have any knowledge of the matters being raised in this lawsuit. This lawsuit, Jane Doe 1 versus Gavin Potter, et cetera, et cetera. Jane Doe 1 is a former Scientologist. She's a former Sea Org member. She's a former Commodore's Messenger, which is a more of an elite unit within the Sea organization. Scientology has all of Jane Doe 1's personnel files, ethics files, auditing files. They know, Scientology knows everyone they could ever possibly ask to come forward to refute the claims in Jane Doe's lawsuit, which is, of course, the only thing Scientology would be interested in doing. Scientologists have already been documented over and over and over again as being perfectly willing to lie under oath, lie on the stand, lie in depositions, lie in affidavits. And that's all Scientology ever asks its members to do, is to come forward, fill out false affidavits saying this person's lying, this person's always been a liar, you know, and they're making it all up. So that was an interesting argument. Let's just take a look at this real quick. So the title here, result of leaked sex complaint, Scientology can depose Brian Kent in Jane Doe 1 lawsuit. I'll tell you some of the language used to describe the goings on in this lawsuit. Give me pause. I will add some clarity as we go on here. Okay, so in the beginning here, the first part here is just about them asking to unmask Jane Doe. We don't have to actually spend really any time on that section of it. Let's go to the second section. And this has to do with why, what are the events that led up to the judge actually saying, yes, you can depose attorney Brian Kent, someone who for a short period of time represented Jane Doe 1, Jane Doe 3, and a number of other Danny Masterson victims, represented them in a civil lawsuit no longer represents them in that lawsuit, even though that lawsuit is still ongoing. You can depose the attorney that used to represent Jane Doe 1 in a completely unrelated lawsuit. You can depose that attorney now and also Jane Doe 1 now. A little additional framing that I'm going to do. One of the most incredible and powerful things about this specific lawsuit, Jane Doe 1 versus Gavin Potter et al., is that for the first time, a judge is about to rule that Scientology's arbitration agreements are unenforceable because they are unconscionable. This has never occurred before. No such ruling has ever been made. The only times that I'm aware of that a judge has ruled about the unenforceability of Scientology's arbitration agreements is when the lawsuit was pertaining to behavior and activities that occurred after a person left Scientology. So, for example, Leah Remini's lawsuit against Scientology is about a number of ways in which Scientology has interfered with her professionally since she has publicly come out against Scientology. A judge did rule. In fact, I'm not even sure Scientology even tried to make the argument. But the fact that Leah Remini had, when she was in Scientology, signed a bunch of these arbitration agreements, those arbitration agreements were completely inapplicable to Leah's lawsuit against Scientology because she wasn't trying to sue Scientology for anything that happened to her while she was in Scientology. The same ruling was made in the lawsuit that a number of Danny Masterson's victims filed against Danny Masterson, David Miscavige, and Scientology for harassment, intimidation, fair game, and all this kind of stuff. That lawsuit was pertaining to things that the plaintiffs experienced from Scientology after everyone who was after all of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit had left Scientology. So the arbitration agreement did not matter. Until now, every single lawsuit brought by a former Scientologist who was suing for something that happened while they were still in Scientology, I can already think of some exceptions to what I'm about to say. Okay, every lawsuit in the last 8 years that has been brought by a former Scientologist for something that occurred when they were in Scientology, the courts have ruled, doesn't matter what it is, it's got to go to arbitration. Okay, so anyway, let's pick it up where the blog picks it up. Okay, it says, before Megan describes the next part of the hearing, we have a little more background to describe. As we said, Judge Broadbelt's brutal ruling that would have declared Scientology's arbitration to be unfair was squelched when David Miscavige, Scientology's leader, had Judge Broadbelt removed. But Scientology is obviously concerned that Judge Brazil will follow Broadbelt's lead. So they are trying to throw whatever they can at the arbitration motion to make it stick. That includes submitting declarations from Jane Doe's mother, who is still a Scientologist, as well as Gavin Potter, who is her ex-husband, and others. Now they want to depose attorney Brian Kent, an attorney from Philadelphia who has nothing to do with this lawsuit. He did formally represent Jane Doe 1 and the other Jane Does when they first filed their civil lawsuit, Bixler versus Scientology, against the Church of Scientology and Danny Masterson in 2019. I will say this, I haven't seen this specifically reported. The judge at the hearing a couple days ago specifically said that almost nothing could get him to overrule the tentative ruling that was already issued by the previous judge. He sort of said that Scientology attorneys seemed to think it was just like completely going to be, relitigated, re-argued, and redecided. And the judge says, no, it would take close to an act of God to get me to rule differently than how the previous judge ruled. This is why Scientology is so desperate to do anything and everything they can to delay, postpone, delay. When in doubt, delay. That is pretty much Scientology's legal strategy. This will be an absolutely devastating ruling. When this tentative ruling becomes an actual permanent, whatever they call it, permanent final ruling. I should have a chat. I'm going to have at some point in the near future a chat with my lawyer friend Zach to make sure that I truly understand. Would this ruling actually create a precedent? Will this ruling, what are the chances that this ruling will be published as a ruling, which is a very specific legal thing that makes a ruling have some sort of a precedent. If you can have a final ruling that's unpublished, which means it can't really be used as a precedent. Anyway, that'll be a conversation I have with my lawyer friend Zach. All right, let's keep going here. Okay. Another woman who has not publicly identified herself. Oh, right. Another woman, meaning someone other than Jane Doe 1. Another woman who has not publicly identified herself also hired attorney Brian Kent at that time with the idea of suing Scientology. But she later filed a confidential complaint with the Pennsylvania bar accusing Brian Kent of grooming and of unwanted sexual advances. That complaint was supposed to remain private as it was being considered by the bar. There's one other piece of information that's being omitted here, which is that the other woman being referred to here is still suing Scientology and does have new representation. And it was actually her new representation that filed the complaint with the bar against attorney Brian Kent. Now, it says that complaint was supposed to remain private as it was being considered by the bar. It's not quite clear what supposed to remain private was. Who is it that wanted this complaint to remain private? And who is it that had the discretion to break or violate that privacy? The thing is, one thing that Tony Ortega knows, but he's not saying because he doesn't want to piss off the person who's leaking him all the information, is that it was the woman who filed the complaint herself that violated the privacy or assumed privacy of this complaint by sharing it with a whole bunch of people in the former Scientology community. And when she did so, she made it clear that because she personally was kind of embarrassed about the information in the complaint, that if the complaint were to be made public, her only request was to be a Jane Doe. That was her only request. And that request has been complied to by everyone who has discussed this complaint. All right, let's keep going. Tony says, however, some YouTube activists obtained a copy of the complaint and made it public against the wishes of the victim, which has seriously jeopardized the investigation. And now Scientology is trying to take advantage of it, asking Judge Brazil to allow them discovery to bolster their arbitration motion. Namely, they want to depose Brian Kent because they say that the complaint against him indicates that the unnamed victim accused him of telling her to destroy evidence. And since Brian Kent was also Jane Doe 1's attorney in the Danny Masterson case, in the Masterson case, not the criminal case, but the civil case, they want to depose him and depose Jane Doe 1 to determine if he also instructed her to destroy evidence, which they say would have implications for this lawsuit. This is absolutely unbelievable. And we haven't gotten to Megan Cunif's reporting on this yet. It's interesting that Tony uses the language, some YouTube activists obtained a copy of the complaint, making it seem like there was some sort of a proactive effort to illicitly obtain something. The woman who made the complaint literally gave a copy of this complaint to no less than 5 individuals in the former Scientology community. And I have seen documentation and have documentation showing that her specific request was that if this information was to be made public, that her identity not be specifically revealed in the report. So that is interesting. It is interesting how someone can spin the narrative on this depending on how they feel about the persons involved. But we'll still call it journalism, guys. Okay, let's see. So Megan Cunif's reporting is as follows. Scientology's lawyer, Bill Foreman, cited claims by another lawyer who was suing Scientology. The story was that attorney Brian Kent attempted to tinker with evidence material to his points claimed against Scientology. Foreman says that he has reason to believe that Brian Kent may have also asked his other former Scientology clients to delete their text communications. Okay, I really do have to jump in. Okay. The complaint against Brian Kent, the complaint that was submitted to the Pennsylvania bar, basically says the part of it that's applicable to what we're talking about here, that Brian Kent told one of his female clients who he was having an inappropriate, unethical relationship with, he would tell her to delete their text messages. Now realize, he's not telling her to delete text messages that pertain to the lawsuit. He's telling her to delete text messages that pertain to their inappropriate relationship. And I'm not saying that makes it legal or ethical. I'm just saying, let's know what it was, and let's know what it wasn't. It had nothing to do with deleting case product, is I guess the word that I want to use. And this was all happening long before Jane Doe 1 filed her lawsuit against Gavin Potter, David Miscavige, Bridge Publications, and the Church of Scientology International. And what's interesting here is that Scientology's attorneys are trying to argue we need to do more discovery into the subject of Jane Doe 1's arbitration agreements. We need to know if Brian Kent has coached her to lie or told her not to say things. You have to understand, they have no reason to believe this occurred at all. How could Brian Kent have coached Jane Doe 1 to do anything or told her to delete anything pertaining to a lawsuit that didn't even exist when Brian Kent was representing Jane Doe 1? It is so completely silly. What is remarkable is that Scientology managed to get the judge to agree to depose Brian Kent. And I'll tell you who's probably the most unhappiest about this is Brian Kent, because Brian Kent is now going to be deposed directly on the subject that is the subject of the complaint against him currently pending with the Pennsylvania bar. This is terrible for Brian Kent. It's irrelevant for Jane Doe 1. There's nothing there. There's no there. But I can tell you that Brian Kent cannot be happy. And I wonder what would happen if Brian Kent just shows up and pleads the fifth the entire time. Does that give Scientology a lot of ammo to make hay with? Because now they can make all sorts of inferences. Unfortunately, I think that's probably what might happen. But okay, let's keep going here. Okay, the story about Brian Kent telling his other client to delete text messages was confirmed by the Philadelphia Inquirer on April 26th. Foreman said that Jane Doe's previous lawyer, Brad Edwards, filed a document in the Bixler case saying he learned in April of an unwaivable conflict of interest. Oh my God, I forgot. This gets so incredible. So we're like, this is significant, Foreman said. Foreman said he believes the crime fraud exception could apply to Brian Kent's otherwise privileged attorney-client communications. Scientology is trying to imply that Bradley Edwards stepped down as representation in Jane Doe 1's lawsuit against Gavin Potter because they're speculating, because Bradley Edwards found out that attorney Brian Kent years earlier had instructed or possibly instructed Jane Doe 1 to destroy text messages. This is insane. It's insane that Scientology can pretend that they don't already know why Bradley Edwards stepped down. Let me lay it out for you guys. All of the attorneys who were jointly representing Jane Doe 1 in her lawsuit against Scientology and Leah Remini in Leah Remini's lawsuit against Scientology all stepped down at the same time, citing unwaivable conflicts of interest that had arisen. It is extremely obvious that the conflict of interest that arose was between Leah Remini and multiple of the Jane Does, one or more of the Jane Does. Now, Scientology already knows this because they already watch every minute of every video that's produced on this channel and other similar channels on this topic. And Scientology already knows this. But this is the throw all of this shit to the wall and see what sticks strategy. If we can do any little thing we can do to delay and delay and delay and delay and delay. I was just personally so tickled to see Scientology pretend that they don't already know why Bradley Edwards stepped down. Okay, but the judge doesn't really know everything that's transpired and all the water that's gone under the bridge here. So the judge has unfortunately been convinced to move forward with these depositions. Now, one thing that's interesting, and I'm going a little bit out of sequence. At the end of the entire hearing, the judge made it clear the trial in this case is not going to be set until like 2028. So in some respects, none of Scientology's shenanigans here are actually delaying the trial date itself. I mean, I think the judge said, okay, let's come back January 15th or something and we'll set an actual trial date. And Scientology's like, you realize that Scientology's like setting a trial date is that's not what they want. They do not want to set a trial date. They want to keep coming up with reasons to postpone setting a trial date or to eventually convince the judge that this should go to arbitration instead. It's not going to work, guys. It's not going to work. All these delay tactics, all these crazy delay tactics just give us more things to do videos about. At the end of the day, it's not going to be effective. Okay. So Scientology's attorneys are like, this is significant. We need to get to the bottom of this. Jane Doe 1's lawyer, John Kucera, said he knows why Bradley Edwards withdrew. And I'm happy to explain outside of court the everything the Scientology defendants are doing is part of a strategy designed to delay and to use that period of delay to further harass the plaintiff. What they're doing is they're trying to avoid the tentative ruling that was written by the prior judge, John Kucera said. David Miscavige's lawyer, Alex Weingarten. Guys, it has not been reported that the lawyer in the Free Britney movement that was representing Britney's family against Britney, the lawyer on the wrong side of the Free Britney movement is now representing David Miscavige. This is absolutely incredible. I'm going to dive a little deeper into that in a later video. David Miscavige's lawyer, Alex Weingarten, said that Jane Doe wasn't forced to marry anyone. Oh, you know what, guys? That reminds me. I really want to show you. I skipped something in the beginning of this blog post, but I want to show you how Jane Doe 1's lawsuit is being described, and I want to explain to you how it is not correct. Okay, it says this: Jane Doe 1 is suing Scientology for negligence when it forced her to choose marrying Gavin Potter when she was 17 years old, or to go into the Sea Org's prison program because she had admitted to sexual contact with Potter. Jane Doe 1 chose the marriage and they had a child, but she is alleging that any sex she had with him over the course of their marriage, which lasted from 1992 to 1997, was non-consensual. Now, I don't know about you, but when I read that, to me, what I get is this lawsuit is being described as that the lawsuit has nothing to do with whether intercourse they had while married was consensual or not. It's nothing to do with the lawsuit. That might be just some of the information that's in the description of the lawsuit in the initial filing, but the lawsuit has to do with child SA that occurred between Gavin Potter and Jane Doe 1 when Jane Doe 1 was a minor and Gavin Potter was recruiting her to join Scientology's Sea organization. When it was then revealed, when it came to light in Scientology that this had occurred, Jane Doe 1 was basically given the option, because this is the sort of victim blaming culture that exists in Scientology, to go to Scientology's, rehabilitation and labor and reconditioning camp, or you could just marry Gavin Potter. And then they did get married. But the lawsuit is for the SA. It's not for anything that happened after the marriage. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, now jumping back down to okay. The rest of the article is just Scientology claiming that it's ridiculous that Jane Doe 1 was forced to marry Gavin Potter, and there's just a bunch of inaccurate claims made there. But I think I've already hit the main points that I wanted to discuss in this particular video. And I got to get out of here because I got to go to the airport real quick. So I wish I had more time to go through all the comments, you guys, but I've run a little bit long and I really do have to dip. So that's all I'm going to do for right now. Stay tuned. Much more to come later today and this weekend. Thank you all for hanging out with me, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not,